What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone is enjoying their Sunday so far. Today, we're going to be looking at the 2025 ACC Men's Tournament. We're going to be doing a little bit of a preview as well as making our picks all the way from the first round to the championship, which will be concluding on Saturday, March 15, which is just a day away from Selection Sunday, which we will be unveiling the field of 68. And usually the ACC has a ton of teams represented in that field of 68, but only this year, 3 teams. So we will see which team will come out of this conference tournament on top. So let's go ahead and get through the 4 teams which will be on the double bye, and then we will get to our picks all the way from the first round to the championship. So starting off with the regular season champs, the Duke Blue Devils, and man, this Duke team has just been rolling through this conference. Only one loss in the conference, that coming to the Clemson Tigers earlier in the season. Duke getting a big win on the road against North Carolina and ultimately sweeping that season series against North Carolina. So Duke, even if they lose their first game, which I ultimately don't see happening, Duke is locked in to be a number 1 seed. And honestly, if Auburn goes out early in the SEC tournament and Duke makes a run and ultimately wins the ACC conference tournament, I could definitely see a scenario where Duke jumps Auburn and takes over the number 1 overall seed, but we will have to see how that scenario plays out. The number 2 seed in this conference is Louisville. What a turnaround for Louisville. This was a team that was playing in the first round of last year's tournament, and now they get the advantage of having that double bye and getting that much-needed rest. They don't have to play until Thursday, so this Louisville team is definitely going to be safely in the field, and they are the number 2 seed in the ACC tournament. The number 3 seed in this tournament is Clemson, and Clemson right now in the latest AP poll was number 11. Clemson, this is a team that made it to the Elite 8 in last year's tournament, so we will see if Clemson can make a run. And if they win the ACC title game, I could definitely see them getting a better seed in the March Madness tournament. And then the number 4 seed is Wake Forest. If North Carolina would have beat Duke on Saturday, North Carolina would have been that number 4 seed, but ultimately it is Wake Forest. So Wake Forest is a team that is on the wrong side of the bubble. So really the only way that the Demon Deacons can get to the big dance is to make a deep run, and they're going to have to probably beat North Carolina and beat Duke, or either Louisville or Clemson along the way. So definitely, it's definitely going to be a big hurdle for Wake Forest. But hey, we saw in last year's tournament with NC State making a deep run and making it all the way to the Final Four last year. Sadly, we don't see NC State in this year's tournament as they did not qualify. As with more teams in the ACC, less teams are qualified to make it to this ACC tournament. So let's go ahead and make our official predictions, starting with the first round. In the first game, that will be tipping off on Tuesday, March 11th, featuring number 12 seed Notre Dame and number 13 seed Pittsburgh. And talk about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was the team at the start of the conference that started off really hot. You thought that they're all right. They're going to be one of those teams out of this conference that will be making the field of 68, but ultimately not the season that Pittsburgh had in mind. But in this matchup, I am going to go with the number 13 seed Pitt Panthers. I think that they move on and face off against North Carolina. So that is our first winner of game number 1, the Pitt Panthers. So we have a little bit of an upset with the 13 seed over the 12 seed. So moving on down to the number 10 seed Virginia Tech and number 15 Cal. So we're going to be going with actually Virginia Tech in this one. Virginia Tech is prone to making some deep runs in this conference tournament. So we have them moving on against Cal in that matchup. So moving on to the last game in the first round, features number 11 seed Florida State, number 14 seed Syracuse. Hamilton, Florida State's head coach, is going to be on his way out. So this potentially may be his last game with the Seminoles. Number 14 seed Syracuse, a proud program that has just definitely been disappointing the past couple of seasons. But I am going to go with Florida State. I think that they're going to rally behind their head coach, and Florida State's going to move on to the second round of this tournament. So moving on to the second round of this ACC tournament, let's move on to the 8-9 game between Georgia Tech and Virginia. In Virginia, we talk about them. Their head coach left them before the start of the season. But Virginia versus Georgia Tech, I am going to go with Georgia Tech in this matchup, in this 8-9 game to move on to play number 1 seed Duke. So moving on to the number 13 seed Pitt versus number 5 seed North Carolina. North Carolina just needs to make a deep run in this tournament. I just don't think that they could just beat Pittsburgh and beat Wake Forest. They are probably going to have to beat Duke to be safely in this field of 68 coming up. But I am going to go with North Carolina. They've been playing well down the stretch. Just ran into an absolute buzzsaw on Saturday against the number 1 seed in this tournament in Duke. But I am going to go with the Tar Heels. I think that they advance on to the quarterfinals and live another day in this ACC tournament. So moving on now to the third game in the second round is the number 10 seed Virginia Tech Hokies facing off against one of the newcomers in the ACC, Stanford. I'm actually going to go with a little bit of an upset here, go with Virginia Tech. So they're going to go with the Hokies. So a little bit of an upset there with the 10-7 moving on. So let's go with Virginia Tech. Number 11 seed Florida State and number 6 seed SMU, another newcomer in this conference. And these two teams just played on Saturday, and Florida State routed SMU at home in Tallahassee. And I'm going to have the same thing. I just think that this Florida State team is going to rally around their head coach. They don't want him to leave just yet, but we are going to go with the Seminoles pulling off that 11-6 upset. So that is our quarterfinal matchups. Let's go to quarterfinal number 1 with number 1 seed Duke versus number 8 seed Georgia Tech. Duke should really have no problem in that. I'd expect them to rout Georgia Tech in this matchup. Though crazier things have happened in this tournament, I just don't really see the way that Duke has been playing, and their starting 5 has just been fantastic as well. Number 4 seed Wake Forest versus number 5 seed North Carolina. This is pretty much a bubble game for both of these teams. The loser of this is likely out of contention and more than likely in NIT contention. But I'm going to go with a 5/4, go with North Carolina. I just haven't really been impressed with Wake Forest this season. I just think that North Carolina has been playing better basketball down the stretch. So we get Duke versus North Carolina part 3 in the semifinals. I think that everybody would want that again. So let's go ahead and move on to the next set of quarterfinals with number 2 Louisville versus number 10 Virginia Tech. Sadly, I have Virginia Tech's Cinderella story ending here as Louisville, the number 2 seed, will be moving on to the semifinals to face the winner of the number 3 seed Clemson Tigers versus the number 11 seed Florida State. And I am going to go with Clemson. So pretty much all chalk in the semifinals with a 1, 2, 3, and a 5 seed advancing on. So let's go ahead and talk about those semifinals with the first game with number 5 seed North Carolina versus number 1 seed Duke. Duke ultimately doesn't need to win this game. They're already going to be locked into the number 1 seed. North Carolina, though, they really need this one to feel safe about them because right now they are on the wrong side of the bubble and only being 1-10 versus quad 1 opponents. They definitely need this one, but I just don't really see it. Both the first matchups with Duke and North Carolina wasn't really close. North Carolina played well in the first half, but ultimately Duke stormed back in the second half. I just see the same thing happen again for the third straight time. So give me the Blue Devils moving on to the championship, and they will face the winner of number 2 seed Louisville versus number 3 seed Clemson. A fantastic basketball game that we're going to be having in the semifinal. But go with a little bit of an upset with number 3 seed Clemson over number 2 seed Louisville. I could see either of these teams making a run in this tournament, but I am ultimately going to go with Clemson moving on to the championship. So championship Saturday will feature number 1 seed Duke versus number 3 seed Clemson. I just hate to be chalky, but I am going to go with Duke in this game. I mean, it's hard not to pick against this team right now. So I am going to have the Duke Blue Devils, the number 1 seed in this tournament, and the regular season champs going both regular season and as well conference tournament champs as well. So I have Duke winning the ACC conference tournament. So those are my picks. Let me know your picks down in the comments, and we will be having more conference championship predictions with the SEC, Big 12 and Big 10, and as well as the Big East as we look forward to championship week and ultimately finding out the field of 68 on Sunday. So definitely an exciting week upcoming if you're a college basketball fan. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to today's video, and I will catch you all next time. So long for now.